we recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an Alp.
Energy, the seed corn of all development, all growth, all survival, energy. So energy, transportation, information, and manufacturing, these are the things that change humanity, that will change world power, and they are descending upon us in ways that are very unique. The technology is on the engineering benches today, but most Americans and most in Congress have not had time to really look deeply at what's going on here. But I've had the benefit of 33 years of studying and becoming friends with these engineers and these scientists. This technology can be built today with technology that is not developmental to deliver any human being from any place on planet Earth to any other place in less than an hour. To deliver Wi-Fi from space, where you never need a cell tower to connect. To deliver energy from space, where you never have to plug your phone in and it trickle charges, and you can use that energy over time. It can be applied to cars, to houses. The technology of Edison and Tesla that we live with in our energy environment, our paradigm today, is expensive, it's dangerous, and it's wasteful. Plug it into the wall, but yet that's what we all do because we are used to paradigms. The power of space will change world power forever. And it doesn't have to be a big country to do it. It can be a small island country, let's say New Zealand. Because the technology, if optimized, can change world power, and there's nothing you can do if you don't have that power. The nature of power. You either have it and your values rule, or you do not have it and you must submit. We see that play out again and again in history, and it's playing out now. But we get trapped.
Can you explain the disconnect between your conversations with President Xi, when those potentially could happen and why they haven't happened yet?
Well, you don't know whether or not they've happened.
That's a question.
Yeah, I mean, I've never said whether or not they've happened, but I have a very good relationship with President Xi, and I think it's going to continue. And I would say they have reached out a number of times.
Xi or they?
Well, the same. I view it very similar. It would be top levels of China. And if you knew him, you would know that if they reached out, he knew exactly. He knew everything about it. He runs it very tight, very strong, very smart. And, yeah, we're talking to China.
So they've reached out in recent days or recent weeks?
Excuse me?
They've reached out since the 145% tariffs?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Do you believe
a lot?
Do you believe
a lot all the time. We're talking.
Have you ever talked directly to President Xi?
I don't want to say that. Yeah. It's just not appropriate.
But you're speaking
very well with negotiations, I think, with all countries. And Scott could tell you a little bit, but we are doing very well. We have a lot of countries that want to make a deal. Frankly, they want to make deals more than I do. Go ahead, Scott. Would you say something?
Yeah, we've got a process in place. We're working on the big 15 economies first. We had a fantastic meeting with Japan yesterday. I believe there's been calls with the EU already. And then we have South Korea coming in next week. And I believe India is also talking. That's moving very quickly.
Because, as you know, Russia's a lot bigger. It's a bigger military force. And if you're smart, you don't go involved and get involved in wars that you can blame the man that was sitting in this seat. Biden, he didn't know what the hell was going on. But I can guarantee you that, and everybody agrees to it, if I were president, that war would have never taken place. I'm not blaming him. But what I am saying is that I wouldn't say he's done the greatest job, okay? I'm not a big fan. I really am. I'm not a big fan.
We are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. Donald Trump is trying to fundamentally change the world economy, the trading system. But really what he's trying to do to Canada, he's trying to break us so the U.S. can own us. They want our land, they want our resources, they want our water, they want our country. I think we're all going to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm ready. I've managed crises over the years. I've built strong economies. We will fight back with counter tariffs. We will protect our workers and those businesses, and we will build the strongest economy. We will build Canada strong. I'm asking for your support, the honor of doing so. Thank you.
Welcome to the SCIF. I've got my co-secret agent with me, Bill Quinn. How you doing, Bill?
I'm well. That's the first time I've acquired that title, I think.
It's Good Friday. Peace to all. I'm going to go to a service later in the day. But welcome to the SCIF, where we kind of bring you everything you need to know to be the smartest guy in the room. Got a really, really packed show today. We've got Steve Kwast, Lieutenant General of the United States Air Force, coming on shortly to talk about energy. We're going to delve into that, and then a lot of subjects in the second hour, and we're going to finish General Comer's interview in the second hour on the MIGWES mission. But today is April 18th, and here's your mission brief. U.S. begins withdrawal of military equipment from Poland. We're breaking that story from sources on the ground. We'll talk about that. The end of the Google ad monopoly. That is huge for us because we have pending lawsuits going on against the Trusted News Initiative and antitrust. Russian-American alliance against fascist Europe. That's what the Kremlin is pushing. Is that real or not? Weinstein and the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy brings the Jesus painting, Calming the Waters, back into the hallway at the Academy, and Mr. Weinstein doesn't like it at all. And then Canada descends into hell. So we're going to go into all these subjects. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for all our supporters from all around the world. And I'm going to bring in General Kwast. How you doing, Steve?
Hey, very good. How are you two?
Great. So look, you're my classmate, 1986, and I have to make sure you're the real guy. So we're going to do a secret handshake here. So see if you get the right response. Fast, neat, average.
Friendly, good.
Excellent. You're the right guy. Okay. So we'll tell the audience later what that is. But Bill is really interested in this subject, and I'm going to let him throw the first question. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us, General. So listening to your comments that we played at the top of the show, one of the first things that strikes me is this notion of energy is, in fact, a strategic either advantage or disadvantage. Could you expand on that, I gather, from your thoughts?
Yeah, energy has always been a strategic advantage for those that dominate the marketplace and subjugate people to use their method of energy delivery and the revenue that comes from that, and then the economic power that comes from that then provides national security. So it's kind of at the beginning of the food chain, if you will, of the progress of all humanity, but also the power of the economics of a nation to do all the things that energy does for your peace, your prosperity, your security, and your health. So like making steel, for example, and so on. So it is, but it, so it can be an advantage, but it also can inhibit progress where you're trapped in one paradigm of energy, and that paradigm defends the paradigm to the death. The military industrial complex, if you will, or I'll add the military industrial congressional complex. where the lobbyists convince Congress that any new thing is dangerous, dumb, or different, and should be rejected, and the money should go to perpetuate what has been. This is what inhibits innovation and energy. If you don't get the energy piece of that right, you inhibit the progress of the human race, especially by a country like America that has the innovative magic sauce, the superpower of innovation to really transform the energy market.
So by paradigm, are you speaking of things like our notion of, hey, everything has to be plugged into a wall, we have to be pulling power constantly to run our daily lives from power grid and so forth? Is that
Yes.
kind of an example of where you're going with that?
Right. It would be like people in 1898 that used horses to get to market and used candles to light their home and wood to heat their home. And you said, give all that paradigm up and you'll have 2 cars in every garage, a man on the moon, a computer in your pocket, and roads everywhere and power lines electrifying everything in your life. They would have thought you were, you needed to be burned at the stake.
So it would seem that there are possibilities that many people either don't know about or don't consider applicable today.
Yeah.
And I suspect we're edging on some areas that maybe can and can't necessarily be talked about yet.
Sure.
Could you give us some examples of maybe some of the areas that would be possibilities going forward?
So like any transition to a new paradigm, it has many different winners and losers because that's the nature of innovation. And the moment you have a country like the CCP choosing a winner, then you're going to have an advantage over them because innovation is like a garden. You plant a lot of seeds and some blossom and some do not, and you don't know. So anybody that historically tries to pick winners and losers is going to lose. You have to let the free market and make the choice, because innovation in its core sense is something that's novel, meaning it's not been done before, and useful, meaning people want it and are willing to pay money for it. So the energy sector transition to the new era will be the same way. And here are some examples that are in the public domain. So there's not, we don't have to get anywhere close to, tiptoeing on the edge of classifications. Let's take, so you're going to see technologies like helium-3, modular nuclear, basically small nuclear reactors that are safer. Your kitchen table has a higher probability of going off high order at the molecular level than these nuclear reactors. The technology has come that far. So people that are afraid of nuclear just don't know the state of the technology, and they're throwing back to the 60s when they had to get under the table and worry about a nuclear detonation or a power plant going high order like Fukushima or some of the other disasters we've had, like 3 Mile Island. So let's just talk about some of them real quick. So you have helium-3, you have nuclear, you have hydrogen, you have solar power from space, meaning that you can take the high intensity energy of the sun in space. You can convert it to a radio wave. You can beam it to Earth, which we've done. The X-37 has been demonstrating this. We know it can be done if you just build it, the infrastructure, and then you convert it back into electricity on the planet at 80% efficiencies, where right now we're in the 20s or low 30% efficiencies with any of our power plants, whether it's nuclear, fossil fuel, wind, wave, solar. They're all in the 20s and low 30s at best. And just taking the sun's energy that can go through the atmosphere and the day and night, because the sun is always shining in space at high intensity, like 450 degrees Fahrenheit. We have, so all of these will usher in. But let me just give you one quick example, then I'll stop for the follow-on questions. Let's take helium-3. Helium-3 is very hard to find on the Earth because it cannot get through our gravitational field and our atmosphere. But it can get to the moon. And so on the moon, we know there's enough helium-3 on the moon, if we were to mine it and bring it back to Earth, to power the entire current electrical demand for thousands of years, for the whole planet. That's how powerful helium-3 is. And right now, for example, a few weeks ago, you saw Microsoft announce their quantum computing capability, but they have to cool it down to 80 millikelvin. meaning 1,000th of 1 degree of Kelvin, which is like negative 276 degrees. Again, the numbers maybe are approximate. Let's not get hung up on that. But the best capability we have to cool something that cold for quantum to actually work is hydrogen, and it can only get down to 1 Kelvin. It can't get down to the kind of temperatures you need to really expand helium-3 as a source. And helium-3 is millions of dollars for even a small amount. But China is already on the moon, on the far side of the moon, mining helium-3 for their quantum industry. And the first nation that can actually operationalize quantum, like we know can be done, it's been proven, if they can affordably have the energy to cool that quantum down to an operational temperature, will dominate the globe. They'll be able to know every secret that's ever been and work at a speed where no other economy or nation could keep up. There's another example of an energy source, helium-3, that is so rare on Earth, it's too expensive. It is abundant in space. And this is why space is such a powerful economy of the future, because just the simple helium-3 could be enough energy to make China the dominant economy on energy for the next several thousand years.
Steve, there was a report that came out from Google that they did a quantum test and it literally altered the magnetic field of the US or the Earth. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. And, so quantum is demonstrating some things that surprise us, that make us realize we know less than we think about the universe and how it's put together. And it's not just the magnetic distortions that they're observing. It's the fact that quantum essentially can change space and time. You've heard people talk about this, some of our chief scientists and so on, and they're not talking about time travel necessarily, although it reveals that time travel is possible because quantum is doing it. The quantum elements are doing it, and because you affiliate two molecular elements in the quantum realm, you move them apart, and it doesn't matter the distance; they react with one another instantaneously. Okay, so basically, they are the communication is acting faster than the speed of light, meaning it's instantaneous. And if it can do that at several hundred miles or several thousand miles, it can do it at several billion miles. So now we can see, we don't know why or how, but the universe is connected where at the subatomic level, there is a communication source that is almost infinite. And when we start tapping into our knowledge, and this is what Einstein talked about. He talked about, hey, this relativity stuff is just a caveman's approach for what we know now, but I know it's wrong. And in future generations, we're going to start discovering how little we know about how the universe is put together. And for me, quantum is really the evidence of God.
That's fascinating interpretation. I want to expand on that in a few minutes. So what you were discussing earlier, this notion of things communicating and being in some way connected that we don't quite understand yet, is some may have heard of this as quantum entanglement. Yes.
Yes, that's it.
And so the ability to somehow gain knowledge and control over that could drastically alter our ability to do all those things: communicate, interpret, possibilities, interpret actions. Yeah. It really is fascinating. It's interesting also to me that quietly in I believe 2020, third quarter, if I recall correctly, there was an organization underneath the U.S. government that formed and began, I believe, research work in addition to other things, quantum.gov. And I was lucky enough to sit in on a few of the very early meetings. And you could tell even the scientists were kind of, in an interesting situation. They were being guided by folks in terms of the big goals, yet the pathway to get to those goals was as yet quite unknown. It was fascinating set of discussions. Have you been looking at that?
Yes. So, and let's tie this back to energy. So, for example, if China is the first one to access space for the helium-3 that can fuel a quantum economy, now when you combine quantum sensing, quantum communication, and quantum computing. Now you can, in the military, we call it the OODA loop. Now you can observe what's going on around you, understand it, communicate it in a way that nobody else can crack. And you can crack every secure communication of everybody else in the world at greater than the speed of light, meaning instantaneous. When you have that kind of speed of advantage of understanding the strategic environment, being able to communicate with dominance, preventing your enemy from ever communicating in a way that is not revealed and that you can see, you gain an economic dominance that could last for thousands of years until we figure out ways of cracking into that kind of dominance. And it's an energy dominance at the foundation, and then a technology dominance that comes out of it. And quantum is a good poster child for why energy is so important, and why the energy inventions are being stifled and suffocated because of our regulatory environment, our ideology that we can take no risk, and that economic security and safety is more important than progress. I mean, it goes against everything cultural about the American spirit of the pioneer, the maverick, the people willing to take risk to try new things, and failure being a part of progress and innovation. Elon Musk has done it well. I can remember in the Air Force when Elon Musk would blow up a Falcon 9 in 2011, 2012, and the leadership of the Air Force would come to me and say, "See, Steve, you're wrong. Elon Musk is a Ponzi scheme. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's blowing up rockets." And I would say, well, remember, that General Schriever.
We blew up a few.
Yeah, General Schriever blew up 12 rockets before we had the first one that worked for our ICBM nuclear triad. And the only reason he didn't get fired is because he played golf with Eisenhower every weekend, and Eisenhower protected him. So we are trapped in the same problem with our energy market in America, where the military industrial congressional complex and all of these private companies that create our energy in old ways are not willing to change because they're at the trough of money, and anybody that comes in to disrupt that industry is a villain. And they are attacked. Legally, they're attacked. Personally, they're attacked. They're attacked just like we were attacked in the Air Force for talking about the fact that new technologies were going to change the character of war for the Air Force. And we were ostracized for it because we were not part of the team. We were not, the fighter pilots with the scarf around our neck that thought the single seat, small fuel bladder, low weapon load fighter was going to be the dominant king of the hill. We learned that about the Army. The cavalry was not the king of the hill in World War II as it was in World War I. And the battleship was not the king of the sea in World War II as it World War I, because we invented mechanization for the Army that replaced the cavalry. And we invented air power that replaced the battleship.
Well, Steve, as a helicopter pilot in the Air Force, I feel your pain because the fighter pilot mafia is real. I have a question. I see the last 4 years and more, and maybe the buildup, this regulatory issue is maybe some foreign actors there to stop our advance. I mean, what's going on in Ukraine? What's going on? Getting our focus away from what we really should be focusing on. I think there may be, some foreign powers involved in that. What say you?
Yeah, so this is the genius of President Trump and the geopolitics of this, where President Trump is smart enough to not only see the future, surround himself with people that can understand these changes and trend lines of technology that change fate, but also build relationships of trust with other world leaders where we build on our common ground. So yes, there is an international force trying to prevent us from moving forward because they are in control, they have power, they have money, and they want to perpetuate the past system, the deep state, or whatever you want to call it. And it's global, it's not just in America. Yeah. So Xi Jinping has to deal with the same thing. But these leaders are building on a common ground where uplifting the human condition with the sovereignty of each culture with its own beauty and its own magic needs to break out of the slavery that we've been put under by the geopolitics of the current model of money, power, and control. So yes, there's evil forces in that, and there's good forces, and President Trump is on the side of good, and he is going to break out and avoid war at the same time. It's a brilliant diplomatic, geopolitical, and strategic move based on economics, and then downstream from that, security and prosperity.
So one follow-up, the energy grid we have is a huge liability. I mean, it can be shut down immediately with an EMP or whatever. Right. You're talking about technology that would leapfrog that and make us less susceptible, correct?
It is, that's true, but we also have to fix the current because this journey takes time. And this is why colleagues of mine, when I was the commander of Air Education and Training Command down in San Antonio, I was able to partner with the, a lot of very smart people and CPS, Energy down in San Antonio. And we started the Electromagnetic Defense Initiative. And this was an initiative that's now a White House hallmark program. And this was under President Trump, where we are demonstrating to all these private energy companies by using technology out of our federally funded research labs, like all of them, with technologies that are affordable for energy companies to put into their grids. And so we used a circuit down there in San Antonio and proved that you can affordably make your grid resilient to electromagnetic pulse attacks or natural occurrences like the Carrington event that took place in 1859 that melted every telegraph punch code because 3,000 volts went through all of North America. Luckily, it was only telegraph at the time that was vulnerable. Now we've built an entire nation vulnerable to that. And so there is a journey underway because we started that Electromagnetic Defense Initiative back in 2018. Actually 2017, and it is now running full steam with the Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense, all engaged with a public-private partnership to demonstrate and eventually migrate our power grid to be resilient to man-made attacks and Mother Nature attacks.
Interesting.
Wow.
Bill?
A few minutes ago, you mentioned some of the capability that would put whatever country had it, assuming us, in really a dominating position. The ability to instantly break other people's, secure codes and so forth. That presumes that we or whoever has that is acting, I believe, needing to be acting in a righteous way, because as we've seen over the last months, years, perhaps, there's the possibility of somebody getting into power that is not acting in a righteous way, and then having that capability, that ability to dominate, sounds scary, ominous, even.
Yep. It always has been that way. For example, you look back at 1904 and 1905, and the articles written that it would be immoral to operationalize the aircraft or the airplane because you could drop bombs on somebody's head. So every new technology can be used for good or evil. This is why we have to break the back of the fake news. This is why you guys are so important, because if we can shine a light on truth around the world and on people using things in ways that are not consistent with the fact that we are moral creatures, and that if we do not have a moral foundation, no constitution and no culture can survive. We see that play out again and again in history. You lose your moral foundation and you will lose your society. It just does not fit with human nature and the way we were built by God. So you're exactly right. But it doesn't mean to fear the technology changes, because God gave us brains to solve problems in ways nobody could envision. Our responsibility is to shine a light so the cockroaches that want to use it for evil purposes, for their own control, dominance, power, and money, cannot hide. And that the world can see what's going on, because and this goes back to getting out of some of these secrets that classify things that should never be classified, and then it becomes a cancer that metastasizes and grows and is not revealed until there's a catastrophe or a disaster. So there's so many levels here of the human race waking up to the fact that they've been enslaved on the information domain, on the technology domain, on the innovation domain, and we have constipated the human race from making progress since World War II because of these dynamics.
Well, it's amazing to me, just a little media accountability. I mean, we're growing. We have 13 channels across the world, but just that shining some light in certain states like Georgia and Florida, I mean, it really upsets the apple cart, because they're used to dominance, as you said, information-wise, and that has to be just broken completely.
Amen.
Yeah.
And they're becoming sensitized to it, too. We had an instance just in this past week where we put something out and literally had several reachbacks from legislators, a couple of which were saying, hey, wait, I didn't vote for this. So they're reacting saying, I don't want to be, I'm not going to get anywhere near that third rail. I don't want to be there. And to your point, we, with listening to Todd now for several years, he always goes to, we got to make sure we're getting the truth out, because that's the foundation of everything that we're doing.
So this is why everybody that talks about fifth generation warfare and what is old is new, meaning that deceiving your adversary subtly and insidiously is the most efficient way of having your will. Because if their mindset and their understanding of truth is shaped in the right way, they are acting against their own self-interest and in the interest of the person that can deceive them. So information and the knowledge of your strategic environment is the most important thing. And without that, all the energy in the world, all of the technology in the world will just play into your enemy's hands. And what we have is a world community that is trying to use our advantages against us, meaning our open society and our innovation spirit and our congressional method of yearly budgets all are being played so they can insidiously enslave us and gain advantage to use it at the time of their choosing. So we information is the foundation of all of that, and that's what's coming to light. People are starting to see that. Wait a minute, Russia isn't as bad as people have been told. Russia can be our friend, and they can be a valuable partner. China, the same way. The Chinese people are beautiful. The Russian people are beautiful. Oftentimes, it's individuals, oligarchs, or people with great money that are the puppet masters of others that are perpetuating their advantage at the price tag of human progress.
So you mentioned great civilizations. The Persians are another one, Iran. I hope we do not get in a war with Iran. I think the regime can be taken down from the inside. What say you as a commander of massive fighter forces yourself?
Yeah, you see this with President Trump. And this is the thing that most Americans, by the way the movies have shaped the art of war, do not understand that national security, people in uniform are really in the art of peace. That the moment there's violence, you have failed because you have failed to deliver a superior strategy that can win without firing a shot. And this is because it's done on the information domain and the energy domain, the economic domain. And this is why the conversation is so valuable. So yes, with Iran, there is no reason we cannot get to a peaceful resolution. And President Trump talks about that every day. In fact, recently, even more so. The Iranian people, there is a path to peace without violence. If we can start talking and actually communicating. But what you hear is the people in control don't want us to talk. Imagine that. You can't even talk.
Yeah.
And when you can't talk, then you misunderstand. And when you misunderstand, it drives fear. And when you have fear, you have stupid decisions. And then you're at war. And when people look back, they question, how the hell did we get here? Well, it started by the information domain not even allowing us to talk, or you are framed as an enemy of America, which is as idiotic as saying you can't talk to your neighbor because they are your enemy. When they are your neighbor, they're your friend, they're your community. And if you don't talk, I guarantee you there'll be trouble.
Well, the pushback against the Trump administration talking to Iran was massive. It's still going on, actually. Bill, you got anything else you want to ask?
I do. So I think I was thinking a moment ago, I believe it's Arthur C. Clarke that said that any sufficiently advanced technology is likely to be first seen as magical, because people don't understand it. They haven't seen it before. They don't understand the foundation of it and so forth. You've touched on a couple things that just have people tied up in knots going, what? Did I hear that right? One of which was the ability to travel quickly, apparently. I think I've heard previous discussions on something that might touch on this, referred to as a FAST team or FEST team. And I'm not sure they're the same or even overlap, but I wanted to ask you if you could, within the bounds of where you can go, could you expand a little bit on this? People are finding it fascinating.
Yeah, there's all kinds of questions. And I hear everything from people thinking we're talking about teleportation machines like you have in Star Trek and all that. But this is really very simple. When you take a look back at what we did even in the 80s and 90s with vertical takeoff and landing vehicles that can go up to an altitude, it doesn't have to go into full space, but it goes up to an altitude where the air is so thin that you can travel at 25 times the speed of sound. And so now and they proved it. And Elon Musk is proving it right now. Now he's trying to go all the way into space, which is harder, but he's going to get there. You can see the progress he's making. But even right now, from technologies that were proven back in the early 90s, We could put people into a machine, we could take off, and in 7 minutes or less, they're in the mesosphere where there's so little air that they can move at Mach 25, and they can move anywhere on the planet in less than an hour and land vertically, whether it's on a barge or on land, and it's safe, it's effective, it's been proven. But we have never put the money behind developing an economy to be able to travel with that kind of speed anywhere on the planet. But if we did, it would be like the airlines, like we did with the early airline days, Pan America and Pan Am, and Boeing and others. American put its thumb on the scale of aviation and created an economy that changed the world. So when I say you can travel with non-development capability that's already been proven, that you can get in a machine and take off and fly anywhere on the planet. And these machines, use 100 times fewer moving parts than a jet engine. They use a 10x less fuel. They fly at 25 times the speed of sound. And so they're more efficient, they're more effective. They have been proven decades ago, yet we ignore it because the airline industry and the industry of current terrestrial and air travel is so powerful that the government never puts its thumb on the scale of these new technologies.
So to your point a few minutes ago, so many things are, we get stuck in the paradigm, and for sometimes economic reasons, we don't want to move away from it, because you've got all these folks that say, no, that won't be good for our company, for our organization.
That's right.
We're seeing things like that now in these legislatures around the country, choices being made that are clearly not in the best interest of people in progress. They're in the best interest of the entities who can bring the biggest stacks of dollars, unfortunately.
That's why human nature is at the foundation of this lack of progress. But information can help that, because if America can get back to its roots, where it was the pioneering, innovative, self-sufficient, bold country that was willing to take prudent risk to usher in new technologies that help untie the Gordian knot of past problems that get developed in the industrial age. The sky is the limit. That's why we're the shining city on the hill. That's why every country I talk to is praying to God that Trump is successful, because if they believe that if President Trump cannot break the back of the media internationally, of telling lies, of being in the pocket of these rich people that have the control and the money, and if he cannot usher in a new era, the golden age, that they're all screwed too. Because they don't have the power or the culture of innovation that America has, because it's about the human spirit, and they fear us. Other countries are scared as hell of Americans, and they admire us because they're not allowed to do it in their culture, or they are afraid to do it. But not in America until recently. The woke, DEI, critical race theory ideology neuters this sense of aggressiveness and power and the individual spirit God gave us to change fate with our brains and our heart, but leading with our heart. And that neutering is intentional. It makes a weak country, and a weak country can be perpetuated to be the slave of these people that have control.
No. So speaking on DEI, I'm specifically worried about our Air Force. I mean, it's sick. So are we on the path to fixing it or not?
I'll tell you, Pete Hegseth, that is his #1 goal, and it is going to be great. And you bet it's going to be on so many levels. But these things take time. That seeped in. You and I got to see that early on. I saw it already starting to come in back in 2009 and 8. As soon as Obama got into office, we saw this starting to creep in, and it was horrifying to watch. And so it has been masticized, for the last decade. Trump came in and was able to make a short-term correction, but then exited. And now that he's back in, we can finish the job. But it will take time, and it's going to take some guts to fire the people. Yeah, to fire the people that need to be fired and hire the people that need to be hired.
So another Air Force question. Fighters and drones, the new what is it, 6th generation fighter and drone warfare. Are we on the right track to harness that? Because a lot of what's happening in Eastern Europe is just fascinating, and I'm not sure we're there. What do you say?
Yeah, so this is where it's really hard and, in fact, important not to pick winners and losers. You have to plant many seeds of innovation and then see which one actually is novel and useful. And when I say useful, I mean affordable and solves the boundary condition of why it was created in the first place. So when I take a look at across again, one of my jobs in the Air Force was being the director of requirements for all combat air forces. And back then it included communication, and so what I will tell you is there's a lot of pockets of innovation out there. And what you see revealed is only the tip of the iceberg. Okay. And there are unclassified and classified things happening. But the real problem, of course, is there's still a subtle leveraging to not put too much money behind an idea that is disruptive to the current paradigm. Of congressional districts and caucuses that have people working on a certain thing in a certain area, because it means those people would have to be retrained to a different job, and that politician would not be looked upon favorably because families don't want to have to change. We don't like change. So it is a garden of innovation within the American system, both on the classified side and the unclassified side. The public just sees the tip of the iceberg, but still not enough aggressiveness is being put on those technologies that are showing solutions that disrupt enough to leapfrog past where our enemy is going. So space is the perfect one, and why it's such in the central hub of the conversation, because we're trapped in a paradigm where we make better satellites. But China has a superior strategy of building infrastructure and logistics in space to mine helium-3 and bring it back to Earth and fuel 1,000 years of dominance in energy by China at pennies on the dollar of anybody else using fossil fuel, solar power, or any other method of, or hydrogen, which has its own dangers. So you can see how, we have work to do within the government, because we are not ushering in disruptive technologies to leapfrog our adversaries on the strategic level, not just the tactical level. And it goes back to Alexander the Great and the amazing quote, in the art of peace, which are those in uniform. Amateurs talk about weapons and tactics and toys. I add the toys. Professionals talk about logistics, because logistics is about affordable power projection over time to outlast your enemy, because there's no decisive battle. There's no allure of battle. There's no shock and awe. If you screw over a culture, they're going to resent it, and they're going to wait until they're powerful enough to have revenge. And so violence, again, just begets more violence. And that's why President Trump is awesome, because he is building peaceful communication with these people that the fake news decries as the enemies of America, when in actuality, they can be partners in a brighter future.
Wow.
Completely agree. Bill, you got a last question?
Sure. So I think that many people will be encouraged, probably drawn to research some of the things that you've touched on today. Are there sources or places that you would suggest people look to learn more, so that they can kind of come up to speed, and in whatever sphere they operate, they can try to help support this?
Yeah. So what I would suggest, I want to couple two things they need to do. One, they need to do their research, and two, they need to start getting comfortable with artificial intelligence. And now there's two types of artificial intelligence, and again, they can dig into this, but there's those kind of machines like Chat GPT that have a person behind the curtain that's manipulating and kind of shaping an ideology and shaping answers that may be deceptive, they may be wrong, and the individual may not know it. Then there's the type of AI engines that are essentially, I call it democratized, or they are decentralized, where you are in control of telling the AI what values and morals you want baked into their ideology and their approach, and helping you dig through the data. And to not fear AI, because AI will never be creative and it will never be visionary. Those are things God gave us that no machine programmed by a human being, it looks creative, it looks visionary, because it can move so fast and it can devour so much information so quickly. But even quantum will only be a tool for the human vision and creativity. So what I suggest your viewers do is, start with Grok 3 on X. and start using it. Okay. And buy the upgrade for $30 a month and really start seeing what it can do for you and whether it lies to you, and start finding the boundaries, because all of them, we are like teenagers with AI. And it would be like somebody with a horse and buggy being so afraid of an automobile that they wouldn't even tinker with it or try it out. You can try it out at affordable price points. So use it to discover these things we're talking about today and get smart, because the only thing that's going to save America is a population that takes their citizenship properly and with weight. And that is, they have to research the stuff on their own, and they need tools to help them do that. And when they can triangulate truth with guys like you and other media that's out there that's actually doing good things, the bastards that are trying to deceive us and steal our future and enslave us will not be able to hide.
That's great.
Well, Steve, I think it's providential, but I think our class went through something that most people did not and will not in their lifetime. And I think we were forged for some type of leadership role. And I've been disappointed in a lot of my classmates because they just didn't stand up and have the courage. But wow, just great to hear another 86er get out there and say the right things.
Well, this is why we created the company we created. The Space Built is the name of the company that I'm CEO and chairman and co-founder of. And Dennis Wingo is our chief technology officer, who's the genius behind everything. And it's because we are building the infrastructure and the logistics in space to be able to beat China to this economy that they're dominating right now, and we are not. Moving away from just more elegant satellites that do the same thing, single purpose, looking down, helping the joint force, which is all good, but ignoring the deep blue ocean of the commerce of space. And one last point, General Rich Comer, he pinned on my lieutenant bars at the academy. He was my very first teacher, and he is one of the mighty men of our age. So I'm glad you have him on, because he is the man that motivated me to stick with this Air Force despite the dysfunction I could see growing, because he said, if everybody jumps ship, only the rats are in charge, and you got to stick around and help, even if it comes at great personal cost. So Rich Comer is a great friend. I'm glad you are talking to him, and listen to him closely. He is wise.
Well, he was my commander. He was actually my English instructor at the academy, and I went to him, and he was a helicopter guy, and I didn't realize his background, that he was, a war hero essentially. Yeah. And I talked to him about going into the special operations, which I did, but then he becomes my squadron commander at the 20th SOS, and then ends up being Air Force Special Operations Vice Commander. But and our audience will know, but he was on the last combat mission of Southeast Asia on the Magweb, and then was on the first combat mission in Southwest Asia in the Gulf War. So quite a span. But yeah, and when I walked into the squadron at the 20th, he said, "Sit down, Captain," in his office, and he said, "I got 3 things. 1, be combat ready. I don't care about the paperwork. Be ready to go fight tomorrow. 2, don't screw around with your buddy's wife when he's deployed. And number 3, don't lie to me, or I'll out-process you on the steps of the squadron." And that's kind of stayed with me, but fascinating guy.
So you and I have that in common too. He was my first English instructor. And in fact, the first instructor, that was the first class of the day of the first day of the freshman year. And I remember the books he had us read, like Watership Down, and all of these leadership books. And I can remember him, I thought I was a pretty good writer, and he gave me a C- on my first paper, and it was a great wake-up call. I eventually got an A in the class, but he made me work for it, and it was the best thing that ever happened, because it created this mentorship where he could teach me a few things about what a stupid, young, aggressive kid I was, and how much humility I needed to inject into my life to be useful to people and to God.
Fantastic. Maybe we're in the same class. Bill, do you got anything else? You done?
No. Just a wonderful session and superbly valuable information for us and for our folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
good luck, and have Good Friday. Have a wonderful Easter weekend.
You too. Take care.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, We can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. You just pack a punch that, you know, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. You know, we think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, you know, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker, stealing all the applicants.
Well, Bill, you wanted to talk energy. Did that do the trick?
I found that fascinating, and indeed, I am going to follow through on the recommendations that General Kwast had. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot more to learn, and I think it's up to us to start running down that path to learn it.
Yeah, no kidding. And we're going to stay on it. One of our core subjects going forward, I think, is energy revolution. So we'll make that part of CDM's focus, along with sustainability, resilience, election integrity, and a few other issues. The Ukraine war is another one to get ended. Bill, you wanted to talk about some topics in Georgia and some of the disclosures that have been coming out. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So one of the things that's come out in meetings that I've been in the last couple of weeks is there's a heightened and growing sensitivity and urgency about the senatorial election coming up in Georgia. John Ossoff is up for the end of his term, and there's speculation about who's going to run against him. Some people say it'll be Governor Kemp. Some people say it'll be other folks. But already we're seeing some signs of things that people need to factor in that are beyond the simple dynamics of the election. Let me share something here. So they are reporting that John Ossoff has already got $11 million roped in the first quarter campaign donations, and we're still, we're still essentially a year and 3/4 away from the election. Because of our work and the work of Chris Gleason and Peter Berniger and others, we're aware that there may be something underlying this that people need to take into account. It's fascinating to watch the AJC report this, and they actually are reporting the dynamics you would expect to see from something we have referred to as smurfing. It's a really simple concept, but people often struggle with what it is. We're going to show you what it is in just a moment. But they literally, maybe they don't understand it, maybe they do, and they're just looking at only certain factors. But they even acknowledge in the AJC that John Ossoff's fundraising is 90% from outside Georgia. Now, consider that for a moment. Why would 90% of the first 11 million come from outside? And why would it be spread across 30,000? You can see it here. It's pretty small on the screen, but 30,000 donors. Well, this matches the model of smurfing. So, one, we wanted to highlight that because we need people to understand what we're dealing with. And two, we want to be able to have them understand how this works. So let's pivot over to this smurfing notion. It's really quite simple. There are nefarious actors out there that have access through the internet to identify identities. They could be retired people. They could be people that, very frankly, in some cases, they have the identity and they passed away and nobody's going to be checking and they simply use that identity. They can be people that have given one donation but never gave much more. But in any case, they pick these identities and they use that to create this. You can visualize this as an online sort of merchant card, an ability to pay things. And so they create this merchant card, if you will, for this identity. The person, the John Doe, probably has no idea that any of this is happening. This is being done by some nefarious actor who's stolen essentially their identity. They can use that card and they can produce many, many more. So in some cases, they produce thousands of cards given a single identity, hundreds, thousands. Each one of those cards can then be used to transfer tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of individual transactions of very small amounts. They can send it to NGOs. They can send it to campaigns. They can send it through Act Blue. They can send it through Win Red, which is troubling to many, but it's the fact based on the research that's been done, as we said. So what this creates is this massive wave of anonymous donations going anywhere across the country they wish, in any amounts they wish, broken into very small transactions. Why would they do that? They break them into small transactions to stay below certain value requirements that the FEC and many state governments have to identify the donors. So if you're giving $5 or $10 or something, usually those go in anonymously. You don't have to have the same tracking requirements and identification requirements. So you have this massive wave. Now, go back to what we said about OSAF. $11 million in the first quarter. We're still almost 2 years away. 30,000 donations, donors. But
it's very it's amazing that this hasn't been shut down yet, Bill, but because the evidence is everywhere from Kemp on down. But Kamala Harris, we raised $1 billion in a month or whatever it was. I mean,
yes,
that's exactly what it's just like. Turn on the computers and send the money her way.
That's correct. And it's it's similar to, if you think back over the last few weeks, as Doge got running, what was one of the first things they found? They went to USAID and they found billions of dollars being transferred through hundreds of thousands of NGOs, both here in the country and around the world. By doing that, what does it make it difficult to do? Spot where the money's ending up. And that, I believe, is part of the reason that this has been so difficult to find. That, and I think there are people that don't want to find it, that are still in this, in this matrix, if you will, and want to see it continue. But we have to, as we just got through talking about it a few minutes ago, we have to point light and truth at this thing. It can be proven. It can be shown. We have these qualified researchers that have done this work now for years and have specialized systems that can track these tiny donations and show you what's being done. We here in Georgia are going to make sure that folks here know to look for this and understand what they're dealing with. This is not 30,000 people that want John Ossoff reelected. This is probably a handful of people that said, okay, we're going to transfer $11 million or the majority of it, and we're going to start priming the pump for Ossoff.
Yeah, and we broke 2 years ago that Brian Kemp had 12,000 illegal contributions on his website in his campaign, and we broke the story, and then they disappear off the website. So fascinating.
But it's wonderful you bring that up, because many of the nefarious actors that we've seen in the past 4 years have been recipients of exactly what we just showed, this smurfing activity. I know it sounds unusual, but again, the concept is very simple, just a way of trying to hide very small donations. And as you said, we found 12,000 donations that were given to Brian Kemp's campaign. And when we looked again, when our researchers looked again about 5 months later, magically those transactions had disappeared. When one of the researchers began asking the ethics department in Georgia about those transactions and where they might have gone, they were blocked.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing. I mean, the evidence is there. We've been screaming it for 2 years, So the New York Times and others, conservative ink, are just finding out about this information. But to me, it seems organized. Maybe it's a limited hangout, kind of drip out exactly, and try to keep us from seeing the iceberg under the water. Anyway, what else you got, Bill?
Well, as we mentioned a few minutes ago too, that we had some very interesting dynamics at the very end of the legislative session, and I'll report something I heard last night. I have not had a chance to confirm it this morning, but I believe it's correct, and that is the pressure that citizens of Georgia and then I hope we are helping put this pressure in place, does seem to be having an effect. So we had, as you know, several reachbacks on our reporting on the pesticide bill, the infamous bill that creates a legal shield, if you will, preventing people from suing companies like Bayer and ChemChina and potentially others if they don't have a warning on their label for something that people have been impacted by. Seems odd. Why would you use the judgment of, well, it's not on your warning label, so we can't sue you for it?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I heard last night, there was a very interesting bill that was brought up again after it failed in the previous session. We referred to it as the meme bill. And basically what it said is if you use AI, really they wouldn't necessarily be able to tell whether it was AI or any other technology, but you put together an image or a story that appears to be other than reality, and you're potentially affecting an election, you could be held accountable for potentially a misdemeanor. You do it twice, and it could be a felony with 2 to 5 years imprisonment for a meme.
It's just one of these that makes you shake your head. You have in the UK, which Vice President Vance and President Trump have gone after their suppression of free speech. I mean, it's all of a piece, man. You can see the same methodology across the globe.
That's right.
Fascinating.
And that law has been largely based on a law that was put in place in California. Well, we learned last night that after our last minute yelling and screaming and virtually online, it appears that law got that bill got tabled in the last days of the legislative session, and in fact did not pass. We find that fascinating because prior to that, members of the House were on the floor, literally in some cases yelling that it had to be passed.
Yeah.
And so there does seem to be an effect being created, and we trust that with continued work from the citizens of Georgia and others, we can see that pushback work both here and in other states around the country.
Well, Steve is exactly right. Free media is just critical to the survival of the human species, literally, because somebody wants to kill us and shut us down and make us slaves, and we can't let that happen. So we're going to keep pushing forward here. Bill, are you pressed for time, or you got to go? I know your schedule's pretty tight.
It's up to you, but I will move on.
Like another 20, 25 minutes or so?
I think we can make that work if you would prefer that. Sure.
Well, okay, we'll be right back.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
True life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday. Honestly, true story. who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over ALP. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window and sees a tin of ALP on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, "You use ALP?" "Yeah, I do," says my friend. "So do I," says the cop. "We all do." He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, "Drive safely, sir," and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like ALP and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine marriage.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I'm here with my co-host Bill Quinn. We're also on the Georgia show. I'm not sure. Are we having a Georgia show Sunday, or are we just going to play a replay?
I think we were discussing what might be appropriate. So I think the conversation's still going on that.
Okay, so stand by. We'll let you know, guys, for Sunday at 2. Bill, a lot going on, which I found. We broke a story this morning that the U.S. military is beginning to remove military equipment from Poland, the logistical base. And don't ask me to pronounce that name, but it's near the Ukrainian border. And so there's a lot moving in Ukraine. And General Kwast was talking about talking to Iran and pushback that got, but also the Ukraine war. There's a huge narrative now trying to say Trump is, pro-Russian and a dictator and, Nazi, and go down the list. This isn't going to work, is it? This media narrative on this whole thing? At the end of the day, what do you think?
I certainly don't think so, and the reason is because people have become now sensitized to the questions swirling around why has Ukraine been, this relatively obscure but very fertile, farming land in Eastern Europe. Why has it become the center of this controversy? What did we do maybe to create it? What other things have been going on there? And there's just so many questions. I don't think that, the Mockingbird media is going to be able to break out of this and say, oh, no, we have to continue to somehow support this. In addition, you look at, I'll pull together a few sort of side facts here. Tucker goes over and interviews Putin. Many people think, based on what Biden and others have said, oh, Putin's a horrific person and he's terrible and blah, 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 blah. Yet when you hear him interviewed by Tucker, you get the sense of a man that knows a very deep level of history around his own country, around the interaction with current and past regimes in Ukraine, the dynamic between the two countries, and seemed to be very rational, very measured in his way of describing the problems. And I think that even surprised Tucker, if I recall correctly. He left too with a folder that I don't know that he's ever discussed what was in it. So I wonder if at some point we're going to learn what Putin gave him during that meeting. But the net of the answer is I don't believe that they're going to be able to spin this any other way than rationally, ultimately, for the American people, at least those that are really paying attention.
So there was another fascinating development of the last few days, which we put out on our Eastern European site, Tsarism.com, which covers everything of the former Tsarist Empire from Poland all the way to California, to San Francisco. There's a Fort Rus in San Francisco that used to be part of Russia. Most people don't know that. Of course, people know about Alaska, but it went all the way down the left coast. But this came out that the Kremlin is saying that America and Russia could be a new alliance, like in World War II, against European fascism. So I found that fascinating. And, as you said, Putin's very knowledgeable and can use history to his advantage. And this is, of course, leading up to the May 9th Victory Day parade in Moscow for victory over Nazi Germany. But I just found that really, really, really interesting. Another, Bill, another subject that I wanted to talk about is Google. They were just lost another antitrust case. And, the origins of Google are very nefarious. We've come to find out. They used to be don't be evil, but they took that off several years ago. And now we've got a lawsuit against the Trusted News Initiative, which is not Google, but it's of a piece where they're just shutting down distribution, reach, and ad revenue for people like us. I wonder if this is going to work. And, you know, you have a situation like in Georgia where the legacy media, the AJC, is the go-to media for Georgia, and they don't like anybody else coming in, right?
They don't. As a matter of fact, when big incidents happen, somehow the AJC always seems to be allowed to be nearby and cover it when the rest of us may be excluded. So this happened as an example during the January 16th incident with Senator Colton Moore. They had sequestered an area of the Capitol behind black draping. And I had seen that some of the press went in through an area. I followed along. As soon as they saw my badge and realized who I was, they stopped me. The state troopers stopped me, but they let the rest go in. So when you see the video of Colton Moore being thrown to the ground, that was actually taken by one of these other press representatives that was allowed in. How would they know the difference? Why would they single me out and keep me behind the drape when other people are allowed in? They do not want certain things to be reported by anybody that might, unfortunately, tell the truth about what happened. I don't know. You know, sometimes it's a question of, are they uninformed? Maybe. Are they deliberately spinning things a particular way? Maybe. I don't know that I've run across many of them at the Trump rallies, but they may be there. I don't seem to see them very often. So we will continue to see this dynamic, I think. I ran across somebody the other day that you will find, I think, interesting. They said that they're aware of this left-wing advertiser media dynamic going on to prevent real conservatives, real truth outlets from being properly funded.
Yeah.
And they have a consortium that has been put together of folks that are willing to do so, that are not, you know, they're not the folks that you might all know automatically to go to. And so we expect more contact from that organization in the coming days.
Interesting. Yeah, keep me in the loop on that.
Yeah, they're very aware of the embargo of funds to folks that might actually tell the truth.
Interesting. That's extremely interesting. On that note, I want to bring up another story we had up on our Armed Forces Press site. There was a painting of Jesus calming the water, the seas, in the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, and President Biden, president with asterisks, had it removed and taken to the basement and covered. And it was recently brought back, and there's an attorney, his name is Weinstein, who's been violently going after all the academies to remove any Christian reference at all. But the painting came back, and there was an applause at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy when it did come back. So I find that hopeful, and we need to continue to support some of these actions. It's not, you know, Christianity over everybody, but, you know, a scene of calm for sailors is something. If it was Buddha, it would be a good, you know, a good painting. But anyway, it's interesting to me. The whole Christian thing, Bill, in my opinion, on this Good Friday is becoming a big, big, big issue, because why do they only target Christians? What do you say?
Well, it's notable that that's where the attacks go, but the consistency of that is, I believe, somewhat telling. You can see it. You can see it in everything up to and unfortunately including some actions by the Vatican and the Pope in the last couple of years that are very concerning. You saw comments from Mel Gibson, Tucker Carlson, and others that call into question, you know, what the heck choices are being made by the Pope, and is he acting in concert or in opposition to the values espoused in one, Christianity, and two, Catholicism.
Yeah.
It is notable, and even going back, if you recall, to the Obama regime, if you recall, he spoke at I believe it was Georgetown, if I recall correctly. And during that address, they covered many of the Christian symbols within the auditorium area. And when asked why, why would you cover these up? The answer was we don't want to offend other religions. Well, I'm not sure that any particular religion's symbology is an offensive to other religions. Covering it is probably offensive to that religion. And so
exactly
that answer didn't seem to be very believable. I mean, the other thing is there's this growing notion of, we've talked about it on our other shows periodically, this growing notion of spirituality that many are beginning to talk much more about than they would have 2, 3, 4, or 5 years ago. And I keep going back to, Tucker Carlson has talked about it, Alex Jones has talked about it, and people are aware of it in growing numbers. There seems to be almost a self-awakening of something that was once not thought of as much, but now for one reason or another, people will say, I really feel like I need to get back to my belief, get back to my faith.
It's happening all over. I see it everywhere. Only with churches that actually teach, the real gospel, not a lot of these, Marxist DEI rainbow colored churches, but at the real churches and people are searching out those churches, which I find fascinating. A couple other subjects before I let you go. Yemen, there was bombing. We have to stay on this story just to point to our audience. This is a massive war going on in Yemen by the American Air Force and naval power, and there's no press. So we're going to continue to stay on that. It was in the cold open. And then I want to play a video from Mark Carney in Canada, and we'll talk about that.
We will fight back with counter tariffs. We will protect our workers and those businesses, and we will build the strongest economy. We will build Canada strong. I'm asking for your support, the honor of doing so. Thank you.
Well, that was cut short, but Canada's become quite nefarious. Tucker's all over this. They're literally controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and becoming totalitarian, in my view. What say you?
Well, you could see it going all the way back to, if you recall, the trucker protests, 2.5 years ago? And their actions toward those people, their own citizens, seizing bank accounts, freezing freezing assets, taking trucks.
Yes.
Those are not the actions of a freedom-oriented government, clearly. Lots of issue around Trudeau himself, and of course now he's gone, essentially. You have to understand where Canada also fits in an economic spectrum. They're a fraction of the U.S. We've been spending, I want to say, $250 billion, $200 billion a year to support them in various ways.
Yeah.
And so without that, you can hear this gentleman say, well, we're going to build strong Canada. Blah, blah. They've already been benefiting from the investment that we've made for decades. And many Canadians, I think, recognize that and appreciate it, I hope. And there's no need for this horrific pushback. If, maybe they won't become a 51st state, but there's always room for compromise. There's always room for healthy relationship. And my own experience has been, many of the Canadian people are actually quite a peaceful, kind populace. I'll give you one example. They used to have the show, Cops up there. And in the US, Cops is usually, fist fights and people throwing the cops down and the cops tackling people and so forth. Up there, I happened to watch one of them, and they told a gentleman, hey, you've done something wrong now. Sit down there in your driveway and don't get any more trouble while we take care of this. And he sits down.
Yeah.
And it just my own experience suggests that many of them are actually quite kind people.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will play out.
Well, did you have anything else you wanted to get out, Bill, before we move on?
That's plenty. We may have some breaking news over the weekend. We also may have reports from some of the GOP convention preparation activities that are going on here in Georgia. We'll see whether what the timing is on that. But we are approaching a very interesting time, both here and in other states, as folks determine, how are we going to organize ourselves as we get ready for things like this USAF race and other things. So.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Bill. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to finish the interview with General Comer. Thank you, Bill. We'll talk soon.
You bet.
I'm watching my friends gain more and more weight. And then eventually, I got to tell you, this is a little dark. But bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back, cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have foot, slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIFs. Thanks for joining us. We're going to continue to just bring you massive amounts of information into the new week. So much is going on. Please support us with Nucleo Boost and support your immune system. This bag's empty because I use it all the time. Go to cdmnutrition.com and check it out. Check out the subscription. It's cheaper, but literally the building blocks at your cellular level, everything you need, 1 scoop a day, put it in a smoothie. And for us, it really helps our stamina. So if you're out there and I know somebody who's got 4 colds in the last few months, that means her immune system is down. So you need to fill the potholes in your immune system so that when a disease does come along, you're good to go. So cdmnutrition.com. Second, I want to bring this up on our New York paper, the Manhattan.press. We have a Manhattan bestsellers list that competes with the New York Times bestsellers list. All the good books are there. Editor's picks, children's fiction, nonfiction, history, politics. It's all there. So check it out. If you want to know the best-selling books, don't go to the New York Times, go to us. And you can buy the books there if you want to get one. Just hit checkout under the book and you'll be taken to the checkout page. And any book that you want, you can go to the CDM.press top menu, CDM bookstore. Buy your books from us. Don't buy it from Amazon. Don't buy it from the globalists that want to kill you. Buy it from us, support free media, whether you got one for your daughter at school, education, whatever, just a great novel you heard about, buy it from us. Go to cdm.press, top menu, and the CDM bookstore. And also, if you're interested in what's going on in Iran, because it's very timely, MEK, Paying the Price, The Untold Story of the Iranian Resistance, my book that came out last year, just really a book that will make you understand what's happening inside Iran that can be taken down from the inside. We don't need a major war in Iran. It's at historyofbooks.com and or ltoddwood.com. I can get you a signed copy. I want to go and now finish the interview from General Comer. If you remember, he was a helicopter pilot on the USS Maiguez mission in Southeast Asia. It was the last combat mission of the Vietnam War, and he had gone through the point where a couple helicopters had been shot down trying to rescue the American crew of the Maiguez on the island. And I'm going to pick it up there and let him tell the rest of the story. Here we go.
He went back in the aircraft to get a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, he saw that there were several of the Marines who, in confusion, some of them wounded, didn't know how to get out of the aircraft. And so he led them and showed them how to get underwater and get out to that ramp opening. And he led them. They inflated their water wings and all that. And they tied each other together with the wounded. Right. And they just kind of pedaled out to sea. And one of the small boats deployed by the Holt picked them up.
I see. But
they were in the water for a couple hours. So only one helicopter worth of people, including the 4-man crew of that helicopter, were on the beach on that east side. And they were there all day under fire, hiding by the trees and everything. And they really couldn't get much done except just try to stay alive.
Yeah.
And defend each other. One of them had one of the flight mechanics had 5 gunshot wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of work by his crewmates just saving his life.
Wow.
So there was a real mess over there. But that began the day that ended up being this thing, which was a battle on the island itself. Now, the battle on the island itself did recover the ship, but didn't recover the crew. What had happened on the 13th is the crew had been put on one of the little Cambodian gunboats, and that gunboat had made the shore all the way to the Cambodian mainland. And that crew was out there, was on the mainland when everything began. One of the things that began also, the carrier, the USS Coral Sea, which was steaming from the Philippines at its fastest speed, launched its air wing. And commensurate with everything that was happening at first light at the island, they eliminated the Cambodian Air Force. They just kind of wiped it out. It was on Kampong Song Airfield on the southern coast, and they just cleared it. All of the Air America aircraft that we had left behind to help fight, and the aircraft we had given the Cambodians to fight the communists, all those aircraft were there, and all of them were destroyed.
It's amazing how we don't learn from history. But
so all of them were destroyed at that, right on that airfield. And it's at that time that I believe the Cambodians said, we probably didn't need to do this.
Yeah.
We thought the Americans were pretty impotent here. They just lost the whole Vietnam War, and we thought we'd stick their nose in it. But maybe that's not a good idea today. Let's give the crew back. So they put white flags on a boat and started heading out with the 40-person crew of the Maiguez and go find some Americans to give these people back to, so they'll stop this. And that happened about 10 o'clock in the morning, I think. The Maiguez crew was recovered at sea by, I think, the Holt. And the mission's over.
Yeah.
According to people in Washington, my guess is recovered. The ship's back. We got the crew back.
Except
Okay.
there's 20 guys still on the island.
We had at that time probably a couple of hundred Marines plus on the island. A second and third wave had put more Marines on that western beach, and they really had, and they were managed to bring those one helicopter load up from the south. They fought toward each other and got all together. And this was a real fighting force over here on the west side. On the eastern side, not so much. Just one helicopter, didn't get any help. It wasn't going well for those guys. But, and there was a lot of battle going on the island throughout the whole day. It was a rough battle day. There was a lot of air support went in with A7 and F4s that dropped a lot of ordnance on it. And by the middle of the day, the AC-130s arrived. And sometime in the afternoon, they gave them actual OV-10 airborne facts to pinpoint everybody's position, and then direct fires in an more organized way. My crew, we were waiting for an operational helicopter to come back. It was our job to take it and put a fresh crew on it and go.
Yeah.
I had gotten the phone call. I answered the phone at 6:30 in the morning, and they said, "Come in. We're going to need you. There's a war going on." And so we got our crew together. We got there, before 8 o'clock. At some point in the morning, I remember Colonel Denham, John Denham, the squadron commander of the 21st SOS, a guy who I had flown with on several of my training missions to learn the H-53 in the simulator. We had flown together in the simulator as a crew for a few missions, me as his co-pilot. And he came walking in. Now he's the squadron commander of the other squadron. And he's soaking wet and everything because he got shot down. He sank out there at sea, and then went back into the island on that second wave. Hole in a Gal 5, rifle crew weapon. And he got back, and I said, "Boy, it's good to see you, Colonel." And he said, "Well, it's good to be here." He gave me a hug. He said, "Boy, there's a war going on out there, Rich. Good luck." And I said, "Well, I hope to get a helicopter." He said, "Oh, there's a lot of battle damage." And we ran out at about noon to meet Phil Pacini and his crew with their helicopter, and they told us to go take it and go. And we went out there, and it was a little.
And were you trying to evac the Marines at this point, or what were you? What was your mission?
Yeah, that was our job, to go out there and get the Marines back off the island. Now, at the point in time when the MyGas crew was recovered, there was another wave of the helicopters that were in service still had returned and reloaded with more, gassed up, put more Marines on board, and they were airborne on the way back out to the island. And I heard the Marine full colonel say, "We're going to put enough Marines on the island to sink it or subdue it, one or the other." And he said, "We need to withdraw. We need it to be under control."
Yeah.
And that was his plan. Well, that was countermanded somewhere along the way. And those helicopters were sent back to Utica.
To take the Marines off.
At that point, Jolly Green 1-2 came in.
Which is the rescue call sign for our audience. Yeah.
The first aircraft that came back was Phil Pacini and his crew, and we went out to meet it, and it was all shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we don't think the aircraft can fly. As aux tank on one side had several bullet holes in it. It was unusable, and they were bleeding fuel out of it as they taxied in. So they said, wait for the next one. And maybe 45 minutes later, Jolly Green 1 and 2 came taxiing in, and it was undamaged. It had been the number 2 helicopter that put people on the hold. And then it stood by for rescue for a while and then came back. And thinking it was coming back to load on Marines and go back. But that whole idea was countermanded. Marines were sent back to the PAL, and we were sent back out with empty helicopters to get the Marines off. We took off at about 1:30 in the afternoon, and we're heading out there. And like I said, it was 140 miles out to sea to get to Tang Island. Mm-hmm. So, we went through all of our combat ingress checklists, all the things we talked through, everything that we might do. My crew commander was a guy by the name of Barry Walls. He was a captain. I was a second lieutenant. I sometimes jokingly, I say our flight engineer on that aircraft, we only had one on our crew, and we had 3 pararescuemen.
Mm-hmm.
So we were a crew of 6. We had a pararescueman at each door, and we had Jesse De Jesus, our flight engineer, in the seat.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesse, his actual name was Jesus P. De Jesus. Jesus De Jesus. So, the English spelling of that is Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So we said our flight engineer was Jesus. And so we went out, and we had another air crew in the back that we were taking out there that we were going to put on the Coral Sea. So our orders were to go to the Coral Sea, refuel, and then go to the island and assist in the withdrawal of Marines.
Mm-hmm.
On the way, that was when the OV-10s first arrived out there. And Jolly Green 1-1, which had stayed out there the whole day, the flight lead, flown by Don Backlund and his crew, they stayed there all day. And he was going to stay on site the whole day. And he was refueling either in the air or on the Coral Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And he and the OV-10 were talking on the radio. And we listened to this brief. And what Jolly Green 1-1, Don Backlund, said to him was, this is getting to be really urgent. It's going to be dark before long. And when it gets dark, it's going to be real trouble getting those Marines off.
Yeah.
Because, and if we had tell them bed down for the night, half of them will be dead in the morning.
Yeah.
If we don't get them off tonight. So he said, we've got to get them off, and you've got to get this thing under control, because right now things aren't that organized.
Yeah.
So the OV-10 took mission command, airborne mission command duties on to himself, started sorting things out on the island and coming up with a plan. And he felt that the most urgent was the eastern side, with that one small group of Marines and air crew there with 2 shot down helicopter Hawks on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first thing he wanted to do, to get those Marines out of there. And so there was one 21st Special Ops helicopter at the time flying. That was Dick Brems and his crew. And then Don Backlund and his crew, and Barry Wallace, the crew I was on. So these 3 helicopters were there. We were the assets for the withdrawal. Bob Undorf was the OV-10 pilot who took charge. And he said, okay, 1-1, you're going to go in and get the Marines, and you 2 other helicopters giving what cover you can. But we had our guns. And so we flew in as a 3-ship.
So were you doing gun patterns while he went in to do the pickup? Is that?
Well, we didn't know gun patterns. We'd never heard of gun patterns.
Yeah. Weren't the 20th West at this point.
This was something we developed later on by the time you joined the special ops business. Well, we figured what it made sense to do was just, and we flew an oval over top of them.
Keeping one gun on the target, yeah.
At about, gosh, we were flying between 40 and 60 knots. As we went in there, and he turned his tail to the, and they were getting everybody on board. And they came out. And they headed for the Coral Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And we pulled away from the island. At that point in time, Undorf learned that there was a belief that there was still one person on that side of the island, one person. And he was in one of the shot down helicopter hulks hiding inside there. And so we now had a genuine rescue mission to plot.
Right.
To get that one person out of that helicopter and get him out of there. Well, the plan was for us to go in as the rescue aircraft, hover over that, put the rescue horse down there, get the guy on the rescue horse and drag him out to sea and then reel him in.
Did you have any Sandy support, any gunship support at all, but that the OV-10s were directing? Or
at that point in time, there was an F-4 that was asked to do a bomb drop. He had a couple of dumb 500-pound bombs, and he missed the island. He dropped them and missed the island altogether. In fact, the bombs hit closer to the Marines than to the enemy. And he said, just going back to Korat.
Fast mover, so there was no slow mover that could hover over.
That was the AC-130.
Yeah, okay.
He asked the AC-130, he said, what can you do for making sure that beach is safe for the helicopter to come in there and hover over? Because, of course, doing that got shot down earlier in the day.
Yeah.
And so the AC-130 used its smaller gun and just raked that beach. And it was, we could see it because it was getting dark at the time. It was almost completely dark. It was last light. And sparklers all over that beach and everything. So we said, okay, time to go. And at that point in time, he said, wait, we got to wait a second. And so we held off for a little bit. And that was when the mail delivery C-130s came in. And one of them dropped a daisy cutter bomb on the far end of the island. So this was I think at that time that was a 10,000 pound, might have been a 15,000.
So they basically to create an LZ, create an area. Yeah.
But it was at the other end of the island. And there's no way we're going to get the Marines down there unless they took over the whole island.
Yeah.
But that's where it hit. When that bomb exploded, the shock force was such that we were rocking and doing like this. It was like, it was like the old TV show, that you saw, the SS Enterprise, where the captain doing this on the seat, and instead of actors doing this, we were really rocking.
Wow.
And back then we had a situation where if some violent input happened to your controls, it would give you some feedback in the controls that would light up the light saying servo fail.
Yeah.
Servo fail, which meant your
hydraulics. Yeah.
Your hydraulics controlling the main rotor blade fails.
Not good.
If that happens, you don't have control of that aircraft. It's you're about to die light. But you know, you just reset it, and because it was momentary. Now, that was when we were called to go in. So we went in there, and we got into the hover. Barry was talking on the radio, so he says, "Just you keep flying for a minute." He was coordinating a couple of things with the radio, and he at this point let me fly all the way in until it was time to start the tactical.
Yeah.
And I had already begun the nose up to start the slow down, and he said, "Okay, I've got the controls." And he took over, turned the side flare, and we came into a hover. Jesse was now back and had swung the gun out of the door on the right side, and he had the hoist ready. And so Jesse starts reeling the hoist down. He says, "But I don't see the helicopter that we're supposed to be hovering over." And I looked on the left, and I said, "It's over here on the left side." And just go left 100 yards. And Barry hovered left. Jesse picked it up, started taking over the direction to the pilot, you know, left 10, left 5, left 1.
This is the flight engineer in the door, or the pararescue in the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
flight engineer.
directing the pilot.
Yeah. Jesus over there working on rescue horse, putting it down. And we got into the hover over this helicopter. And at this time, we had the left side. I was on the left seat, and the left gun and the tail gun were able to face the beach. And we had Jesse, but this was kind of a bowl of a semicircle. So as it turned out, instead of just being threatened from the left side, we were threatened from the other side as well. And we were taking fire from you know, 3/4 of a circle around us.
Yeah.
And we took quite a bit of fire. We had something like 55 entry holes of enemy fire. I think we had a few minigun bullets also that went through our machine from the first ingress when we went out there. And I think Jolly Green 1-1 put a stream of minigun fire across us when they did their approach, because somebody was on the trigger, and it went across our helicopter.
Friendly fire.
But that was, but we had 55 when they took our helicopter apart and fixed it, 55 entry holes of battle damage. Both aux tanks were punctured, and we were leaking out of one of the mains when we came off the island. Well, we came off the island because Jesse got shot in the leg. And Randy Steyer, one of the PJs, took over the hoist and was reeling the hoist in.
So you got the guy off the helicopter?
Barry said, we had the hoist inside that helicopter down there. If he was in there, he would have gotten on it.
Yeah.
So there's nobody there, was our conclusion.
Right.
And as it turned out, Dick Brims, who was the 21st SOS crew, said, "No, Johnny Lucas is in that helicopter," who was the co-pilot of that helicopter. Johnny Lucas is in that helicopter. And as we were pulling away, we got word from Jolly Green 1-1 that Jolly Green 1-1 said, "Johnny Lucas is on Jolly Green 1-1 on the Coral Sea now."
I see.
So he's not there.
Yeah.
And we had gone there thinking he was there, but he wasn't.
The fog of war.
Yeah. And you know, we'd done it as quickly as we could because we knew we were time limited. But now everybody's off the eastern side, and the western side began its evacuation. My helicopter, we took off away from the island. It's now pitch black dark. We're flying into there's nothing but ocean and dark sky. So it's all black. Everything black. There's nothing out there. We got an instrument panel in front of us that we can fly on, and we're leaking out of 3 fuel tanks. We can't get back to Thailand. Barry said, we got to go. Our initial thing was we're going to go put our wounded flight engineer on the Holt and come back to the island. But our assessment now was battle damage was too high, and we got to go to the Coral Sea. I gave Barry a heading. He turned to that heading, and it's all black, nothing. And I said, that's the direction. And he said, well, tune up their TACAN so that we have steering to tell us where they are. I said, it's tuned up, but it's not working. The needle is just doing this. Yeah. And I said, it's probably damaged. He said, well, tune it up. And I said, it's tuned up, Barry. It's tuned up, and you're going in the right direction. And he said, damn it, you take the controls. I'll tune the damn thing up. I said, well, okay. So I took the controls, and he looks at the thing, and it's not working. And he says, well, okay, I guess it's not working. And at this time, he says, okay, I'm going to call him and tell him what we're doing. He said, we're going to the Coral Sea. We've got wounded on board. And when he did that on the radio, suddenly right in front of us, all the lights turned on the carrier.
They turned on the lights.
Like they hit a master switch and said, here we are. And they were right in front of us. Wow. We were heading exactly the right way. So now I'm vindicated. It's my vindication as a co-pilot. I knew where we were. And so Barry says, well, okay, you can do the landing. Okay. Battle damage. Left seat landing. We had to come up to a hover with the ship on the right side of us, and we had to come in and slide in between 2 parked helicopters that were damaged. One of them was Jolly Green one, and the other one was all shot up. Well, so we got in there and landed between them, and this was one of the. It went okay, but
the sporty landing, put it that way.
For me, it was all white knuckles and
no goggles, no.
But I didn't want to say you do it because I didn't want to say I'm having a hard time seeing things from over here. Yeah. So I just, Barry said, well, I'll tell you where it is. You stop forward, now slide right. And he let me do the landing. But when we landed, put the weight on the wheels, and the right side just kind of went down. Our strut collapsed and from battle damage, and we were sitting a little like this. But I'm keeping the stick so that the blades are staying level.
So how do you?
We shut down. We did kind of an emergency shutdown. Put the road brake on, shut down the throttles. Boom, everything stops. We didn't even start we didn't even start the APP. We just let everything stop just like that. And of course, the Navy's got their on board before we even did that. And they got Jesse, and I hauled him off, heading for the ship's hospital. And we got shut down and everything. And then, we turned the aircraft over to maintenance, and it's pretty well damaged. It's not going to fly. The crew that we had brought out there, Joe Gilbert's crew, he had kind of taken charge of all of our assets that were on the ship. And he said, okay, the action's over as far as he knew. And he said, I'm going to stay here with the damaged one. Barry, you and your crew take the flight engineer from Backlund's crew and the rest of Backlund's crew and fly back to Utah. And so we took off. It took us a little while because we went down to the hospital to see Jesse. He had a flesh wound. A bullet went clean through his thigh, didn't hit the bone, just tourist tie-up. And we went back to Utapau then. And that was pretty much that.
Wow.
But as we took off, we learned that they were still just finishing the evacuation over there. And Dick Brims got the last load off, and there they went.
And there were 3 left that were executed, right? 3 Marines?
Yeah. Bob Blau and his crew came out with an aircraft that had been put into commission late, and he came out there and he did 2 loads off that West Beach. One he put on the Holt, one he put on the Coral Sea. Dick Brims did 2 loads with, and he put them all on the Coral Sea. The last load was Brims. So he was last on the scene, and he is carrying 2 rescue PJs that he borrowed from our squadron. And this PJ got out of the helicopter and ran around up and down the beach to make sure they had everybody. And he found 2 Marines huddled in a foxhole and got them out of that foxhole and said, "There's not another helicopter. You got to go now." And they got aboard, and they left. The next to last one between Bob Blau and Brims was the aircraft that earlier in the day had took a bullet through a fuel line, and it was going to lose an engine. The flight engineer told the pilot, "Take off quickly. Now we're going to lose an engine," because the fuel, as it goes through, he knew he had 30 or 40 seconds. So that they could get airborne, and get their speed up so they could fly single engine.
Right.
And then he shut down the 1 engine. They did a single engine landing. They had to fly a pretty good piece. They had to go out and meet the Coral Sea. This was early in the day, and the Coral Sea was still on the way. They went and met the Coral Sea and did a single engine landing on that thing. And this Navy chief petty officer and the flight engineer got together, and they hacksawed the doggone fuel line. And took a piece of rubber hose and duct tape and replaced that fuel line to make one of the engines run. The petty officer said, your fuel filters will be dirty when you get home. You'll need to change them, but it'll work.
Yeah.
And they picked up 54 Marines off that beach.
Wow.
And were well above their maximum gross weight when they came off that island, and dropped them off on the Coral Sea, and then they headed back to Utapau. And we were on the way back to Utapau, and Dick Brims said, "I just got the last load. You might as well go on home." So we were on the way to Utapau, and we went back, and that's how it ended.
Wow.
Todd, can we do this in 2 parts?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Well, I hope you enjoyed General Comer's rendition of his the last combat mission of Southeast Asia, the USS Maiguez off Cambodia, which was hijacked by enemy crew. We're big on history here at CDM, and we're going to continue bringing you history that you need to know. We've got a lot to talk about. We'll be back Monday at 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern. And we may have a Georgia show this weekend, Sunday at 2. Or we may not. So we'll put it out on social media one way or the other. But thanks for joining us on the SCIF. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you have any comments, let us know. Put cdm.press in your daily scan, morning, noon, night. Check us out on podcast. We're on Gettr, X, Rumble, streaming live. And we'll see you Monday. Thank you.